I moved into the apartment on a rainy Thursday evening. The place wasn't anything special, just a narrow hallway, a small kitchen, a living room with cracked paint on the ceiling, and a bedroom barely big enough for a bed and a dresser. But the rent was cheap, and after the breakup and losing my job, cheap was exactly what I needed. The landlord was an old man who spoke quickly and avoided eye contact. He handed me the keys, muttered something about thin walls, and shuffled away before I could ask any questions. At first, everything seemed normal. For the first few nights, I slept deeply. The building was quiet, and the only sound I heard was the occasional creak of pipes and the hum of traffic outside. But on the fourth night, I woke up around 3 a.m. with the strange feeling that someone was watching me. You know that feeling, the one where your body wakes up before your mind does. I sat up in bed and looked around the dark room. Nothing, just the soft glow of the streetlight bleeding through the curtains. I told myself it was just stress and tried to fall back asleep. But the feeling didn't go away. Over the next week, little things started happening. At first they were easy to ignore. I'd leave a kitchen cabinet closed, and in the morning it would be slightly open. I'd place my keys on the table, but later they'd be a few inches from where I remembered. Once, I found the bathroom light on when I was sure I'd turned it off. I kept telling myself I was just tired. But then I started hearing the scratching. It usually happened late at night. A faint sound inside the walls. Not the kind of scurrying you'd expect from mice. This was slower, deliberate, like something moving carefully. The first time I heard it, I pressed my ear against the wall. The sound stopped immediately. Complete silence. I waited there for nearly a minute. Then it started again. Soft scraping, dragging, almost like fingernails brushing against wood. I knocked on the wall, half expecting a neighbor to knock back. Nothing. The next day I mentioned it to the woman who lived across the hall. She stared at me for a moment before giving a strange, forced smile. Old buildings make weird noises, she said quickly. Then she went back inside her apartment and shut the door. That should have been my first warning. A few nights later, things got worse. I was lying in bed scrolling through my phone when I heard the scratching again. But this time it wasn't just scratching. There was breathing, very faint, but unmistakable, slow, quiet, coming from inside the wall behind my bed. I froze. Every instinct told me not to move, not to make a sound. But curiosity got the better of me. I slowly leaned toward the wall. The breathing stopped. For a long moment there was nothing. Then, tap, 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 3 soft knocks from inside the wall. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I jumped out of bed and turned on the lights. The wall looked completely normal. No holes, no cracks, nothing. The next morning I called the landlord. He sighed the moment I mentioned noises. Probably rats, he said. These walls are old. I asked if someone could come check. He said he'd look into it. No one ever came. That night I tried to ignore the fear. I watched movies, turned the volume up, and stayed awake longer than usual. Eventually exhaustion took over. Around 2:30 a.m., I woke up again. But this time the sound wasn't in the wall. It was above me, directly over the ceiling. Something was crawling, slowly, carefully, following the exact path from my bedroom to the living room. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The sound stopped immediately. I waited. Silence. Then my phone buzzed with a notification. Unknown number. Just one message. I know you're awake. My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen, trying to convince myself it was a prank. Another message appeared. You hear me moving, don't you? My hands started shaking. I typed back before I could stop myself. Who is this? The typing dots appeared almost instantly. You're closer than you think. I didn't sleep that night. The next day I started inspecting the apartment. Every corner, every vent, every crack. That's when I noticed something strange behind the bookshelf in the living room. The baseboard didn't line up with the rest of the wall. It looked newer. I pushed the shelf aside and ran my fingers along the edge. There was a small gap. Barely visible, but big enough to slide a knife into. With a little pressure, the panel shifted. Just enough to reveal darkness behind it. A hollow space inside the wall. My chest tightened. The space was bigger than I expected. Much bigger. It wasn't just a gap between beams. It was a narrow passage. Like a hidden crawlspace running through the walls. And inside that darkness, Something moved. I slammed the panel shut and stepped back. My phone buzzed again. Another message. You found it. I ran out of the apartment and didn't stop until I reached the street. For hours I sat in my car trying to decide what to do. Eventually I called the police. They arrived later that evening. At first they seemed skeptical. But when they opened the panel behind the bookshelf, everything changed. Inside the crawlspace they found blankets, empty food containers, water bottles, a flashlight, and dozens of tiny holes drilled through the drywall. Each one positioned perfectly to look into my rooms. My bedroom, my bathroom, my living room, everywhere. But the worst part, they found a narrow tunnel leading to the apartment next door. My neighbor's apartment. The same woman who told me the building made weird noises. When police searched her place, they discovered the entrance hidden behind her closet. She wasn't home, but the evidence was everywhere. Photos of me, hundreds of them, sleeping, cooking, watching TV, even one of me standing in the shower, taken through a pinhole in the wall. She had been living inside the crawlspace for weeks. Watching, listening, waiting. The police caught her 2 days later trying to return to the building. And when they asked her why she did it, she just smiled, and said something that still keeps me awake at night. I wasn't watching him, she said. I was protecting him. Then she looked directly at me and whispered, he still doesn't know about the other one in the walls. I moved out the next day. But sometimes, late at night, when the room is quiet, I still hear scratching, slow, careful, moving behind the walls.